NBC News, World Headquarters in New York. This is NBC Nightly News.
Good evening. I'm Alan Bridgewick, and this is the Evening News. Headlining today's top stories, we begin in Iraq for an update on the ongoing prisoner abuse scandal in the now infamous Abu Ghraib prison. To date, there are now more than 270 photographs detailing the harrowing 3 months of detainee torture and violence that began more than 3 years ago when the horrific images of abuse first surfaced. We're all now sadly familiar with the devastating scenes of suffering inside the decrepit prison, including the garish, jackal-grinning snapshots of several soldiers who have now earned a permanent place in the archives of controversial wartime history. In recent developments, pictured here, former Ba'ath Party member under Saddam Hussein, Al bin Ahmed bin Rahman al-Fulani al-Busaid Shalal Harakwati Hamad Kasi Sisnafa Muhammad has been seen with this man, Fahad Zoltan bin Abdullah Harim Nasim Akdal Ramallah bin Sadr al-Jaman Yubi Kamaran Jakazawi, who is purported to be a close confidant and ally of notorious Al-Qaeda fugitive Oragami Aziz bin Abdul Nasid al-Sahud Shedi Khalfa Hasum Muhammad Vihad al-Abu Mazana Sadakan. It has been reported that Mahad Vihad al-Abu Mazana Sadakan, who we will refer simply as Jim, has accused the U.S. of ignoring the deeply rooted U.S. military practice of applying the Geneva Conventions to captured prisoners. Jim alleges a cover-up within the U.S. government of highest order. We will keep you apprised of Jim's actions as new events surface. And now, today's top story. In an unrelated but uncannily similar series of events, recent photographs have surfaced of possibly more inhumane torture, this time on U.S. soil. These images detail several disturbing events at the Nantasket Beach medium security prison on the coast of Massachusetts. As we view these photographs, I would advise viewer discretion, for these images are nothing short of shocking. Within the confines of the rather panoramic prison grounds, we see inmates of all nationalities clearly eating a substance which, from their expressions, appears to be highly distasteful and perhaps even poisonous. These images raise a number of questions, chief among them being what arcane measures were taken within the facility's walls to have these prisoners apparently self-administer the ingestion of this vile toxin. One can only speculate about the degree of confusion and potential psychosis brought upon by the intake of this unidentified but clearly distasteful and odoriferous matter. We can only hypothesize about the mental abuse tactics that led these convicts to engage in this level of self-debasement as we see here. The inmates have become completely disoriented as they meander somewhat aimlessly outside the clearly marked walking grid of the prison yard, an offense that carries with it a severe penalty from oft overzealous prison guards. As we view the last photograph in this remarkable series, I should warn you, it presents a particularly disturbing image. Here we see one inmate apparently under the influence of an unknown venomous substance, actually forcing the toxin onto a fellow inmate, despite clear protestations otherwise. What motivates these actions? The source is unknown. Perhaps the promise of more freedom within the prison confines, or, speculating more darkly, have these criminals actually been brainwashed? To shed additional light on this story, we have now joining us from the Wolfgang Institute of Research, Science and Technology in Munich, Germany, renowned expert in the field of forensic pathology, Dr. Ludwig Spielmannsau, connected live by way of satellite. Good evening, Dr. Spielmannsau.
Yes, good evening. I am acknowledged to be the authority in the forensic field of pharmacological anomalous cerebral analysis substrate chemistry. And yes, it is good to be, how do you say, on the air again in the United States. Yes?
Yes, Dr. Spielmannsau, I want to thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to comment on this late-breaking story of potential prisoner abuse on U.S. soil. Can you provide us with any insights into the startling photographs and what may in fact be occurring here?
Yes, well, as you know, I am board certified in several different scientific disciplines, including renal pathology, advanced subprogressive oncology, institutional ophthalmology, biotechnical genetic haphazard disorders, and dentistry.
Very good, Dr. Spielmann-Sau. Now, in terms
I
of...
also have several minor degrees in various disciplines of neochemical pseudoscience. But perhaps most relevant to the scenario I see unfolding in these photos is my recent doctorate in facial configuration attitude interpretation analysis. Ja, my training here may prove most useful.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Spielmann-Sau. It's been well documented that you've received special honors in this newly emerging science of facial configuration attitude interpretation analysis.
Well, yes. I have received several Maximus Summa Cum Laude Nobel Laureate accreditations from a number of different nations across the globe in this area.
Not to get off topic, Dr. Spielmann-Sau, but with the pace at which breakthroughs are occurring in this new field, how many physicians, or even scientists for that matter, would you estimate have full board certification in the field of facial configuration attitude interpretation analysis?
Yes, well, that would be only one.
Well, that is really quite remarkable, Dr. Spielmann-Sau. It's truly an honor to be able to draw upon your expertise as we discuss these striking photographs from the Nantasket Beach prison grounds.
Ja, proceed.
Dr. Spielmann-Sau, if you could, take a moment to apply some of the techniques of facial configuration attitude interpretation analysis to some of these arresting images that have surfaced. And tell us, Doctor, what do you see?
Well, it is important to first understand that there are now over 24 double-blind case-control multiple cohort prospective randomized clinical trials that have exhaustively and indubitably concluded the 100% predictive validity of facial configuration attitude interpretation analysis. There is extensive ligature underlying the surface of the human countenance, capable of conveying an unending panoply of dispositions across the entire spectrum of human sentiment. In other words, the expression on one's face says a lot. You have the inner and the outer frontalis and corrugator connector muscles. You also have the complete depressor supercilious tendon system and the inner and the outer ribicularis oculi, as well as the zygomatic major and the zygomatic minor masseter triangularis connective tissues. In other words, there are a lot of muscles in the human face.
Fascinating, Dr. Spielmann-Sau. Please, go on.
Thus, I am able to, from a single photograph, based on the contours and flexures of one's visage, determine the exact sentiment of the subject at the very moment the photograph was taken. And, with some additional concentration and study, I can also conclude with exceeding reliability the very set of events that occurred preceding the photograph.
Dr. Spielmann-Sau, that is really quite extraordinary, and if I may say so, you are a gifted scientist.
Yes, thank you.
Now, Doctor, back to the images.
Yes, let us begin with this photo, for it is the linchpin image of the entire series. Above all, this image serves to set context. For despite these prisoners being held in what appears to be an upscale, if not even picturesque, penitentiary, clearly something is amiss. The procedures and principles of facial configuration attitude interpretation analysis lead us to this one clear conclusion. Let us apply the basic formulas to each individual. Here, you can see from the pursed lips and the look of withheld chagrin that this subject has undergone recent extraordinary persecution of the highest order. And with this other individual, she has clearly endured such monstrous treatment that she has settled into somewhat of a perennial state of bewilderment, a reflexive defense mechanism that we have seen in many case studies of the incarcerated.
Dr. Spielmann-Sau, tell us, can you use your skills with facial configuration, attitude, interpretation, analysis to identify the potential source of the anguish that we're seeing
Yeah.
here?
Taken together, we see several consistencies. The tapering of the fractal eukaryotic interior membranes, coupled with the alternating composition of contracted phospholipid epidermal cuticae, it creates a very clear mosaic. To the trained eye, of course. And I conclude that the source of the discontentment for both of these individuals is the very substance they are both eating.
Your conclusion coincides exactly with the preliminary results of the FBI's forensic team, Doctor.
Ah, but of course. And looking more closely at this perplexing conduct, we examine the second image. The primary subject in this photo has emotionally deteriorated from confusion to an almost semi-catatonic state. The passive features, the lack of expression, they are all clear signals of psychosomatic synaptic shutdown. In fact, in the background, I do believe, analyzing the angle of the jawline and the convergence of the chin with the upper sternum, that this subject has slipped into complete unconsciousness. And once again, the common denominator is the very foodstuff they are both consuming.
That is an uncannily accurate representation of what our local law enforcement agencies have deduced, Dr. Spielman.
Ah, yes. Let us address the third photograph. Once again, it is clear, but only through facial configuration, attitude, interpretation, analysis, that the declining emotional state for both of these subjects has continued unabated. One can only question how much more of this poisonous toxin the subject on the left can ingest. And the subject on the right is clearly in the final stages of resignation and capitulation. I fear for this person's well-being at this point. And yet, to my unending bewilderment and incomprehension, they continue to eat this poison. I speculate that there is a highly addictive ingredient in this substance that has rendered these inmates incapable of discontinuing the suicidal behavior.
Dr. Spielmannsau, I speak for our vast listening audience when I say I am somewhat in awe of your powers of interpretation. This has been an extraordinary exhibition of your deductive
Yes,
prowess.
well, that is understandable. The last image I shall interpret, as you alluded to previously, is the most disconcerting. The abuse of one inmate by another is the highest form of detainee hierarchical dominance assertion behavior. It is the classic Helsinki hostage ascendancy scenario. Deducing from their expressions, these subjects are clear rivals within the prison walls. The male, usually the dominant species, appears curiously subservient in this scenario. For while he is exhibiting clear remonstrations against the actions of the female, he is submitting to the abuse. In other words, he doesn't want to eat the stuff, but he is eating it anyway. The female is clearly engaging in the post-competitive Poseidon zero-sum tactic, a commonly applied scheme by those ultimately facing inescapable losses when in confinement. Rather than trying to rectify her own personal circumstances, the objective becomes one of obliterating their adversaries with the complete disregard of their own interests. For it is clear that once having forced the toxin on the male, the female will continue to partake of this nefarious concoction herself.
Dr. Spielmannsau, this has been an enthralling interview, and we would like to extend our gratitude, our heartfelt gratitude, for allowing us to witness your astounding interpretive mastery of facial configuration, attitude, interpretation, analysis.
Wait one moment, please. For my last demonstration of facial configuration, attitude, interpretation, analysis, I would like to analyze you, Mr. Alan Bridgewick.
Yes, thank you very... I'm sorry, excuse me, Doctor?
Yes, in analyzing the parapetal reverse constrainment of your continental ligature, I see that you are experiencing growing concern about the amount of time that this interview is taking.
Well, Doctor, that is simply not true. Well, we have run over on our time just a little bit.
And now, based on the contortional restriction of the anteorbital progressor tendon in your left temple, you are experiencing a growing defensiveness and are attempting to determine a clever but nonetheless transitional rejoinder to conclude this interview.
Why, that is simply incredible, Dr. Spielmannsau. I don't know what to say.
And now, based on the extension of your mularis afferenzae receptor muscles, I see you are experiencing a combination of wonder, astonishment, and mounting respect bordering on deference. And with that, I shall conclude this interview. This is Herr Dr. Ludwig Spielmannsau. I have a PhD in pharmacological anomalous cerebral analysis substrate chemistry. And remember, always, alle Anfang ist schwer, Kartoffel für die Gemüse nachricht Tendienst. Auf Wiedersehen.
Yes, that concludes our interview with Dr. Spielmannsau and our news for this evening. This is Alan Bridgewick, signing off. Have a good evening, everyone.